All right, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here to talk about Rivka. And we're going to jump right in. So if at any point you want to ask questions, just stop me and I will try and answer the questions. Or if it's if I feel like it'll be better answered at the end of the class, I'll just ask you things. But I'd like to make this as interactive as possible. So if you'd like to ask a question at any point, please do that. Okay, so I think one of the very perplexing questions that we have about Rivka, and the place that I want to start from this evening, is quite an interesting story if you think about it, right? Rivka and Yitzhak are struggle with infertility for many years. She finally gets pregnant. And she has this weird thing going on where, you know, as soon as she walks past a yeshiva, she feels that this baby is desperate to be born. She walks past a house of idol worship and she feels the same thing again. And she doesn't know what's going on. So she goes to Yeshiva's Shem V'Aver and they tell her that you're not going to have one baby, you're going to have two babies, right? And they tell her one of them is going to be good and one of them is going to be bad. And she never shares this prophecy with her husband, right? And the question that I want to look into a little bit is, why did she never share it with her husband? It's such a strange thing if you think about it. Like, she knew this incredible information about her children. Later on, when Yitzchak is about to give the brachas to Esav, she doesn't confront him and say, listen, I actually have a prophecy that says that Esav isn't the child that should get the brachas. Really, it should be Yaakov. She doesn't say that to him. Instead, she goes through this roundabout way of telling her son and Yaakov, you dress up and tricking her father. Like, why doesn't she go? Why doesn't she tell him that? So that's the question I wanted to kind of start from. And I think it's going to give us a little bit of an insight into Rivka, into the Avos, and also into how Hashem runs the world, and also into generally into our lives. So let's what I've done for you is I've printed out for the people on Zoom. I'm really apologize that I don't have it. I can't share on Zoom. We will read it out, so at least you'll be able to follow along. And if sure. And if anyone, do you mind to pass the spare copies over there? If anyone would like a copy emailed to you, if you're on Zoom and you'd like a copy, I can send that to you afterwards. Okay, so the source number one, probably for the sake of Zoom, it's easier if I read it out so that everyone can hear. So it says, number one, the source number one, Rivka conceived, the children struggled within her, and she said, if so, why am I thus, right? What's going on here is that she realizes that something strange is going on. She doesn't understand, like, she didn't know that she was having twins, right? She just didn't understand what's going on. In fact, we're told that she was worried that she had one child, she was going to have one child who had a drive both for the good and a drive for the bad. And we're told that, you know, someone who is pulled towards the good, or someone who's pulled towards the bad, that's one thing, but someone who is mixed up, who's involved in both, in some ways is the worst, right? Because they're not, you know, they don't have that clarity to either know, okay, this is the pathway I should take, or the clarity that they go on the wrong path, but then at least they have the possibility to know that one day that, you know what, that's wrong and I've got to change. So she went to inquire of God. Hashem said to her, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 regimes from inside shall be separated. The might shall pass from one regime to the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. Right? So this is the prophecy that she has. I mean, you think Rivka is pregnant, she's having a baby, she hears this prophecy. The first thing she's going to do is go and share that with her husband Yitzchak. She doesn't share it with him. You think through their years of raising these children, and how she could see that Yitzchak had a totally different impression of Esav. Yitzchak thought Esav was the child that was going to inherit, right? That Esav was the one that was going to, the Jewish people was going to come from. So why did she never share that? So let's keep that question in mind, and we're gonna answer some other questions. I'll raise some other questions as well. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to go to source number 2. So what is source number 2? Source number 2 is when it goes in, when the Torah talks about the blessings, right? That Yitzchak is about to give the blessings. Now, what I want you to do when you're listening to this is probably know the story, probably heard it, but I want you to listen to the language of the text and see if there's anything that really sticks out to you. Are there any words that are repeated often, or is there any sort of theme that sorts of it sticks out to you and it comes out to you? Yeah.
Can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
Yitzhak being black.
Yes.
At what point in Esau's upbringing, I mean, as a child, was he a
yes.
good little boy? Yitzhak see?
So my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Yitzhak became blind at the Akedah, right? So he was blind before Esau was born, right? And we're going to come back to it. We're going to circle back to it, and we're going to see.
Well, that makes a difference then, doesn't it? You never saw him
absolutely
as a bad child. Only what he presented.
Exactly.
How he wanted him to see him.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And Rivka never did anything to interrupt, to correct that vision that he had of him. Right. She never turned around to him and said, "Look, I can see what's going on." Right. Or I had this prophecy. But keep that question in mind. Okay. So let me read it through. Imagine it's the first time you're hearing the text. Imagine it's the first time you're hearing the story. See if there's anything that stands out to you. So when Yitzchak had become old and his eyes dimmed from seeing, actually, maybe I'm wrong, because it seems here that his eyes dimmed from the text as he became old. So it could be I was wrong about that.
Yeah, when they were born, he was very old.
That's also true. So I'll have to double check. I'm not 100% sure when he was actually blind. So he summoned Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." He said to him, "Here I am." He said, "See, now I have aged. I do not know the day of my death. Sharpen, if you please, your gear, your sword, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me. Then make me delicacies such as I love and bring them to me, and I will eat, so that my soul may bless you before I die." Rivka was listening as Yitzchak spoke to Esau, his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt game to bring. Rivka said to Yaakov, her son, saying, "Behold, I heard your father speaking to your brother Esau, saying, 'Bring me some game and make me delicacies to eat, and I will bless you in the presence of Hashem before my death.' So now, my son, listen to my voice, to that which I command you. Go to the flock and fetch 2 choice young goats for me, and I will make delicacies for your father, as he loves. Then bring it to your father, and he shall eat, so that he may bless you before his death." Yaakov replied to Rivka, his mother, "But my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth-skinned man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall be as a mock in his eyes, and I will thus bring upon myself a curse rather than a blessing." But his mother said to him, "Your curse will be on me, my son. Only listen to my voice and go fetch them for me." So he went, fetched and brought venison to his mother, and his mother made delicacy as his father loved. Rivka then took her eldest son, Esau's clean garments, which were there with her in the house, and clothed Yaakov, her younger son. She covered his arms and his smooth-skinned neck with the skins of the goat kids. She placed the delicacies and the breads which she had made into the hands of her son Yaakov. He came to his father and said, "Father." He said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Yaakov said to his father, "It is I, semicolon, Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Rise up, please, sit and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me." Yitzchak said to his son, "How is it that you are so quick to find game, my son?" He said, "Because the Lord your God arranged it for me." Yitzchak said to Yaakov, "Come close, if you please, so I can feel you, my son. Are you indeed my son Esau or not?" So Yaakov drew close to Yitzchak, his father, who felt him and said, "The voice is Yaakov's voice, but the hands are Esau's hands." But he did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like the hands of Esau, his brother. So he blessed him. He said, "You are indeed my son Esau." He said, "Here I am." He said, "Serve me and let me eat of my son's game, that my soul may bless you." So he served him and he ate, and he brought him wine and he drank. Then his father Yitzchak said to him, "Come close, if you please, and kiss me, my son." So he drew close and kissed him. He smelled the fragrance of his garments and blessed him. He said, "See, the fragrance of my son is like the fragrance of a field which the Lord has blessed. And may Hashem give you the dew of the heavens and of the fatness of the earth and abundant grain and wine. People will serve you, and regimes will prostrate themselves to you. Be a lord to your kinsmen, and your mother's sons will prostrate themselves to you. Cursed be they who curse you, and blessed be they who bless you." So that's the story of Yaakov getting the brachos from Yitzchak. Is there anything that kind of stood out to you?
It's very easy.
That is correct.
Fathers and fathers and mothers and brothers.
Okay, so now,
especially in italics. Why?
Especially in italics. So I gave you a clue. Now I'm going to make it a little bit harder. As some of you very well pointed out, and again, for the people that are with us in person, you have an advantage that when on the source, it's I've made it quite easy. It's not me, it's where I got it from. And it says son, son. Every time it says son, father, brother, it's in italics. And what's interesting is that the words son, father, brother are repeated so many times from it. But there's something very interesting about the word son. See if you can figure it out.
My son. Always said my.
Yes, and who's saying my son?
Yes.
Yitzchak. Who is Yitzchak referring to when he says my son? Esau. Does anyone else say my son? Rivka. Who is Rivka referring to? Yaakov, right? It's a fascinating thing that if you go through it, every time Rivka is talking about to Yaakov, she's talking about my son, she's always referring to Yaakov. In fact, when she says, behold, I heard your father speaking to your brother Esau, right? She doesn't refer to him as my son Esau. She refers to him as your brother Esau. Every time Yitzchak refers to his son, he refers to Esau, right? It's a very interesting. Now, if you look at the source number 3, there's a time where it's different, right? And that is where it says, Rivka then took her elder sons, this is source number 3, Esau's clean garments, which were with her in the house, and clothed her, and clothed Yaakov, her younger son, right? Which is very, very interesting, because what comes up here is that there's some sort of family thing going on here, right? Where there's the father and the brother, and the father seems to refer to his son as Esau, and the mother seems to refer to the son as refers to, when she's talking about her son, she's talking about Yaakov. Have we ever had a story like that, where there seems to be parents, a mother and a father in the Torah, and they 2 sons, and there's a disagreement about the children and which one is going to inherit from the parents? Exactly. I don't know if I put the source. Yes, I did. If you jump to source number 3, source number 5, sorry. Okay, so we're gonna see the language here is quite similar again. So Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian woman who had born a son to Abraham, mocking. She said to Abraham, chase away this woman, this maidservant, and her son, because the child of this maidservant will not inherit with my son, with Yitzchak. This thing was very bad in Abraham's eyes concerning his son. And so Hashem said to Abraham, it should not be bad in your eyes concerning the boy or concerning this maidservant. Everything that Sarah says, you should listen to her voice, because Yitzchak will be your inheritor. But I will also make the son of his handmaiden a nation, because he is your seed. What happened in this story? What's the difference between this story and Rivka and Yitzchak?
Abraham knew he was naked.
How did Abraham know?
He could see it.
Abraham didn't. How did Abraham know? That's not. Who told him? Sarah told him. And what was his reaction when Sarah told him? He was upset. He didn't like it, and Hashem intervened and said Sarah's right. But what's fascinating is that they had the same disagreement, right? Practically, if you boil it down, like in essence, it was the same disagreement. Abraham wanted Ishmael to inherit from him, and Sarah could see that no, Ishmael's not going to be the one that is going to become the Jewish people. It's going to be Yitzchak, right? And you have to send him away. She went to, what did she do? She went straight to Abraham and said, you've got to send this son away. He's a bad influence on Yitzchak. Now, the parallel stories with Rivka and Yitzchak, right? Again, Yaakov and Esau, we seem to have a thing here where Yitzchak wants to give the bracha to Esau, right? What does Rivka do? She does not do but like what Sarah does, and goes to her husband and says to her, listen, I actually have a prophecy that says, or I can see, I know that Esau is not going to be fit to be the leader of the Jewish people. He's not going to be fit to inherit from you. It's Yaakov. Give the bracha to Yaakov. She doesn't confront him at all. So, yeah.
Because that was her son, not the maidservant's son. Difference between Sarah and Hagar.
Okay, it is one difference. It's a very good point that you're bringing up. The only thing I would say is that despite it almost makes the question, like, even though both were her children, she still had this strong intuition, which, well, it wasn't intuition. I'm not going to call it intuition. I'm going to call it knowledge, because she was told from Hashem that it was going to be Yaakov, not Esau, right? So even though, and she still didn't go and tell him. and tell things. So that's question number one. Are there any other questions when you hear, if we go back to source number one, right? No, I don't have the source in here. I'm sorry about this. Are there any other questions that come up in the story, right? Rivka has this prophecy and she's told one of your children is going to be born and going to be good. And one of your children, let me see if I can even find the words for you. One of your children is going to be born and he's going to be good. And one of them is going to be bad.
So I never had that prophecy.
No. One of which would go to evil and one of which would go to purity. So any other questions about that?
Did she knew which one?
Did she know which one? I believe they would become. Yeah, the elder shall serve the younger, right? So she did know that Esau would be the one that would be bad, and that Yaakov would be the one that was good. And I mean, presumably at a certain age, once she had that knowledge, she could see which one was which. But any other questions?
Yeah, can I just tell this one? Sorry.
Yeah.
Asa says the translation's read to me. We know that Asa was the devil. He smiled from the words he should hear Hashem listen to Twitter. He wasn't a bad person. Asa was known to be the guy that had the rocks monster. He was known to be bad. So there was a red light warning.
So that when you hear something like this, are there any questions that kind of go off for you? Any questions?
I think it's weird in those cases. It was the one who was bad, and the other one who was good.
Yep, it is an interesting one.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Those of us online, what was the question that we're considering? What did the lady say? We can't hear.
Oh, okay, sorry. Apologies. So she was saying that Esau was known from before he was born that he was going to be bad. So I'm saying when you hear something like that, are there any questions that come up for you? So sorry, you were going to say
just something off to another thing. I never knew that Yaakov actually he said something that seems to us to be untrue. When Yitzchak seems to have asked him, "You are indeed my son Esau." And he said, "I am."
Yes. You are raising an excellent question. Let me try and answer it at the end of when we finish this. Okay, if I forget, please remind me. Okay. The question was, if you look through the text, it seems that Yaakov is saying something which is not true, which is a brilliant question. How could it be that one of our others says something that wasn't true? I feel like you've got a question.
What about the hero?
Oh, brilliant. Okay, that is the exact question. Here you have Rivka is told you're going to have two children. One is going to be good, one is going to be bad. What about Bechira, right? Like imagine if you were one of those people and you knew that before you were born. Okay, Yaakov and Esau didn't know that prophecy, but like, how is that fair? Where is that Bechira? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with answering that question, okay, and then we're going to try and understand how it all fits in. Okay, so the thing to bear in mind with this is that we live on two levels of reality. So if you look at source number 4, and I'll read it out for you, this is from the Derech Hashem. It says, "It is necessary to know that even man's deeds are not all the result of his free will. While this is true of most of his actions, there are some that result from a divine decree. Such decrees take place in the same manner as other natural phenomena." Okay, so what is the Derech Hashem telling us here? Derech Hashem is basically telling us, okay, that's just a snapshot, but it's explaining to us the way Hashem created the world. Hashem created the world. He put us in this world with free will, with Bechira. He set it up so that he gave us the space in order to choose. We could choose to do good or to do bad. And the way Hashem set up the world is that it's fair. If you do good, you'll get rewarded. If you do bad, you'll get punished, right? But this is what the Derech Hashem is saying, is that even man's deeds are not all the result of his free will. Right? Sometimes Hashem gives us the opportunity to use our free will, but sometimes our free will doesn't actually result in the desired outcome. Right? Why? Because Hashem has a plan. And if it's outside of Hashem's plan, then it's not going to happen. Someone told me a perfect little anecdote that I think sets it. She was about to talk Lashon Hara about someone, forgotten herself, whatever happened, and she was playing around with a toothpick and she happened to prick herself and she started bleeding and she got distracted and she forgot to say the Lashon Hara, right? She got stopped from saying Lashon Hara. Now what's happening here? And you can flip the story, and I'm sure there's many times where you want to do a chesed for someone else, and then all of a sudden you get distracted, or you get stuck in traffic, or you get delayed, or your car breaks down, or whatever, and you don't actually get to do it. What's happening here is that we have the intention to do something, right? But if Hashem decides that it's not, that person is not supposed to be spoken Lashon Hara about, or that person is not supposed to receive that thing, or whatever it is, that person isn't going to have that thing, then that won't happen, right? We're told, obviously, that if a person intends to do a mitzvah, and then for reasons beyond their control, they don't do that mitzvah, they're still rewarded for that mitzvah, right? So if, let's say, you're intending to say Tehillim, right? And then, you have to deal with a crisis, and you never actually get around to saying that Tehillim, you're still rewarded as if you would have said that Tehillim, right? You want to go out and raise £10,000, and you do your hishtadlus and you try and raise it, and you only bring in £10. Doesn't matter. You did your bit, you tried to, but it wasn't successful. Hashem rewards you for your efforts. The idea we're taught is that everything is in the hands of heaven except for the fear of heaven. Everything that happens is because Hashem ordains it to happen, but we have complete control over our intention. Right. So what's happening here is, and this is a separate discussion, why there had to be this, this thing that there was going to be two sons, two nations, and one's going to rule over the other. Right. How their free will was going to play out within the Hashem's plan, they still had free will. Right. It's a little bit of a hard concept to understand, but the basic way of trying to understand it is that there's two realities, right? There's Hashem's plan and there's our free will within that plan. Yeah.
I'd always learned that we don't have as much fear as we think we do in matters of health or business or whatever. It's all ordained by Hashem. But the only thing that we do have fear in is doing good or doing evil, which is not the same as what we're saying here.
What's the difference? So I'm just gonna repeat the question for people who didn't hear it on Zoom, because it was an excellent question. The question was that she was taught that we don't have so much bechira in terms of our health and business, finance, etc. But we do have bechira in whether we do good or bad, right? So I'm going to ask you, what's the difference between what you're saying and what I'm saying?
You're saying that what is ordained by Hashem will happen anyway.
Right.
Does that mean that there's less bechira involved, even with good and bad? No. So let me give you an example, right? Will a person be healthy? We don't know, right? Does a person have a mitzvah in the Torah to look after their health? Yes, right? Does a person have the bechira to listen to that mitzvah or not? Yes, absolutely. If a person follows the mitzvah of looking after their health to the best of their intention, does that mean that person is going to be healthy? No.
As much as they can.
Not necessarily. Exactly. Not necessarily. The flip side of it is the flip side is exactly the same, right? If someone uses a bechira badly and chooses not to keep the mitzvah of nishmas ma'od nashasechem, right? Does that mean they're going to necessarily be unwell? Not necessarily, right? Is it more likely? Perhaps, because Hashem runs the world in terms of nature. Same thing, talk about wealth, right? Do we have a whole load of mitzvahs and halachas about how to behave honestly in business? Yes, right? Do we have bechira about that? Full bechira, right? Does that mean that if someone is dishonest in business, they are going to be more or less rich than someone who is honest in business? Not
Yeah.
necessarily, not necessarily. Does that sort of clarify the thing that our bechira is what do I choose to do, right? And just because I choose to do that doesn't mean usually, actually, I'm not sure if that's correct to say usually, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? If let's just say I decide that I want to, does that answer the question, or would you like me to expand on it a little bit more?
A little bit boggy still.
Okay, what's still unclear?
About the bechira, the amount of bechira that a person has.
So we have full bechira on our intention, right? On our yiras shamayim, right? Full bechira. Do I choose to want to do a mitzvah? Do I choose to try and do the mitzvah
And then
or
Hashem
not?
decides whether it's successful or not.
Exactly, right? So I'm trying to think of a having children is a perfect example, right? Does a person have bechira of whether they want to have children and whether they want to fulfill that mitzvah? Absolutely. Do they have bechira of whether they're actually going to have children or not? No.
So you have to have the tachon with the bechira. Like, why are you doing? Why not? You're doing the shtadlis for bechira. And at the same time, you have to have the tachon.
You have to have betochen, and you also, I mean,
And that won't guarantee the outcome.
that
No, but that will guarantee a peace of mind.
yes,
whatever
yes.
happens.
And it's important to know that again, it's not a good piece to the question of having children, because it's not just a mitzvah question. It's a very emotional big topic, right? But it's I'll give you a silly example, right? Many years ago, I was making a meal for someone, and as I took it out, I was making like a baked lasagna, and as I took it out of the oven, the whole thing fell on the floor. Right now, it's obviously extremely frustrating when something like that happens, because here I had the intention to do this mitzvah and the whole thing fell on the floor. But if I'm aware that, hold on a second, right, like, you know, I wanted to do a mitzvah, right? I have done what I could to do the mitzvah, and now, through matters out of my own control, if it was, right, let's say I should have done something differently, that's nothing. Let's assume that it was beyond my control, it fell out, I still get the mitzvah, I should have peace of mind. Okay, I've still got the peace.
So she wasn't meant to get the lasagna.
Right. No, but if I've offered, yeah. But you know what? Like, I can buy her a pizza from the pizza shop, right, and send it in. So she won't get a delicious home cooked meal, but she'll still be taken care of. But there are so many other things that you know, like, you do a chesed for someone else and it goes haywire, right? I remember once I took a meal for someone else, and you know, I called as I called them up to drop it off, they were like, no, you're not supposed to be sending it today. Someone else is supposed to be sending it today, or whatever. And it's like they didn't need it. So it's very easy to feel down and feel like, wow, I went through all that efforts for nothing. But it's not. I went through all that effort because I wanted to do the right thing, and I still did the right thing. And
That's what you were meant to do.
yeah, I was meant to do it, and I still get the benefit, the reward of doing that mitzvah, right? So we have full bechira, and Hashem has a plan, right? So it's kind of like there's two realities that we kind of live on, right? So here is why there could be a plan. Hashem has a plan. Hashem gave Rivka a prophecy, which leads us into a question: is what is a prophecy? What's the point of it? No, Yitzchak was not told about. I mean, I'm sure he had prophecy, but not about Yaakov and Esau.
It's a divine vision of what is going to be.
Almost. That's what we generally think of it is. It's a divine vision of what is going to be. It's a but it's more than just a vision of what's going to be. It's almost like, sorry.
A promise.
It's more than a promise. Hashem's communicating, and what's the point of that communication?
A portrait for the future.
It's more than just knowledge. It's almost like a command to the person, right? It's almost like, this is what you have to make happen. This is what you have to kind of activate, right? This is why some people, well, I'm giving you away some of the answers, right? So for example, Yosef, right? Yosef was given a vision of him being the leader of his brothers, right? It wasn't just a vision that this is what's going to be. It was a, sorry, he had to actualize it. He had to activate it. He had to become someone who was the leader. He had to go down to Mitzrayim. He had to bring his brothers up. He had to take care of them. It's a plan that someone that so when Rivka's given the prophecy, it's not just this is what's going to happen. There's a reason why she was given that prophecy. Right, so which I think leads us into the question of why was she given the prophecy and not and not Yitzchak, and we'll maybe talk a little bit about why she never shared it to him, because a child learns differently from a mother and a father, and it's very, very fascinating, because there's actually research on it that shows that a mother and a father teach children different things, and we see it in the Torah as well. Like we're told Shema b'ni musar avicha al titosh Torah simecha, right? There's a musa that you're supposed to learn from, that the father's supposed to teach the child, but there's a Torah that the mother is supposed to teach the child. So what is the difference between what the mother and the father does? So the mother teaches the child its primary value system. How does the mother do this? By knowing her child and by teaching in a way that the child can absorb, right? So for example, a mother doesn't just say, okay, I need to take my child to school. A mother understands that I need to emotionally get my child to school so that they can learn in school. Right? It's a whole different way. It's not just getting the kids in the car and dropping them off at school. It's setting them up for the day and sending them off with love and with care, and the mother is generally much more intuitive, has a much more intuitive understanding of the child, so they can talk to the child in a way that the child can absorb. What does the father do? The father is a much more intellectual type of learning, right? The father teaches them the intellectual knowledge, right? More about like their place within the world. So this is why Rivka was given the prophecy, right? Because she was the one who had to know her children, right? She had to know which one was going to be the one who is going to be the leader of the Jewish people, which one is going to need a different type of education, right? So that's why she was given it to him. But why did she never tell Yitzchak? And there's a fascinating, I don't know if yes, there's a fascinating mitzvah that says that this is based on source number 6. So when Rivka meets Yitzchak. So the source, the Torah says, Rivka's family called Rivka and said to her, will you go with this man to marry Yitzchak? She said, I will go. So she goes with Eliezer. Then Rivka arose with her maidens. They mounted the camels and followed the man. The servant took Rivka and went. Yitzchak came from having gone to Be'er Lachai Ra'i, for he dwelt in the south country. Yitzchak went out to supplicate in the field towards evening, and he raised his eyes and saw camels approaching. Rivka raised her eyes and saw Yitzchak. She inclined while upon the camel. She said to the servant, who is that man walking in the field towards us? The servant said, he is my master Yitzchak. She then took the veil and covered herself. So the Netziv points out an incredible idea here and says that there was no coincidence that Rivka met Yitzchak at the moment when he was davening mincha, right? Let's put it in context. It was a hashkocha process that is when she was first meeting him. Rivka came from a family of idol worshippers, right? Yitzchak was known for his gevura, for his inner strength, his self-discipline. In fact, he's the one that spoke about mincha. Who introduced mincha, who established mincha. And mincha is we're told mincha is the tefillah that has the most zechus, the most merit. Why? Because Shachris, a person davens before they get going with their day. Mariv, they daven at the end of the day. Now, Shachris, when you're in a rush and you want to get going, it's hard. Mariv, when you're tired at the end of the day, it's hard. But the hardest thing of all is to stop in middle of the day, stop when you're doing something else and go and daven mincha. Like that takes incredible commitment, incredible discipline. And this is what Yitzchak was, what his trait was. Was Gevurah, was that inner discipline. And that's why Mincha is the tefillah that has the most zechusim for. So when does Hashem orchestrate that Rivka meets this Yitzchak is when he's davening Mincha, and she immediately sees this person with this personality of gevurah, of strength, of discipline, right? This connection to Hashem, right? He's davening mincha, and she felt a little bit of in awe of him, right? So if you see the last sentence, it says she then took the veil and she covers herself, right? And this kind of set the tone for their marriage, that she always felt a little bit in awe of him, right? She always felt that like he's a little bit beyond her, right? And that's why when she had this prophecy, she didn't share it with her husband. She didn't go and tell him, because it wasn't the same as Sarah and Abraham, right? She had that little feeling of awe of Yitzchak. Now, why did Hashem do that? Why did Hashem orchestrate it so that their marriage was like this, and that she felt a little bit that her husband was above her, was beyond her? Is because Yitzchak had to remain blind to the prophecy. It had to be something that he didn't know about. Why? Because what's the father's job? The father's job is to give the children an intellectual understanding, right? An understanding of their place in the Jewish world, right? And for that, and to teach Torah, right? Literally to teach Torah. And for that, he had to believe in the potential of both of their children, or both of them. Because if he understood that Esau was not going to be the son that was inherit from him, would he bother investing and teaching him so much? Would he? Probably not. And what would that do? It would limit Esau's free will, right? Because then he wouldn't have the knowledge, he wouldn't have the understanding, he wouldn't have the bechira. So Hashem set up this situation that Rivka was given the prophecy. Rivka was told this, and that's why she said to Yaakov, when she says to Yaakov, she doesn't just say, listen to me, she says, listen to, where does she say it? I'll read it to you. She says, listen to my voice. She says, listen to my voice, that which I command you. She's not just saying this is what I think, she's saying this is the prophecy that I've been given, right? Because she was given that prophecy about her children, but Yitzchak had to be blind to it, because this way he would believe in the potential of both of the children, and he would teach both of the children, and both of the kids Yaakov and Esau would both have free will to decide who they could become, right? They could both, if they both have the Torah learning from the father, and they both can make different ways, then they have free will. Let's bring it back to ourselves, and then I will to nowadays, and then I'll open it up to questions. Okay, so nowadays we aren't given prophecy, right? When a parent has a child, they're not given an image, this is what your child is going to be, right? But we do have intuition, right? We do have intuition about our children. And in fact, we're told that when a parent gives a child a name, they're given Ruach HaKodesh, right? They have divine inspiration, that Hashem gives them some sort of idea of what to name their child, because the name of a person is connected to the essence of who they are. With all that, we also have blind spots about our kids, right? And the idea really is to have that balance, right? That balance between, yes, I develop my intuition, I develop the knowledge of what I have, but there's also blind spots. And, if you look back at parenting, there are sometimes, you look at things and you're like, how did I not see that in my child? It's a blind spot, right? And just like Yitzchak had that blind spot about Yaakov and Esau, and it was for their goods, right? Because it helped them have free will. So too, the blind spots that parents have for their children is, and it works both ways. It works from the parents' perspective. When we have blind spots about our children, it's because, yeah, Hashem is reminding us that just like we have free will, our children have free will, right? We could do our best, but we're not in control of our children's lives. They have blind spots, and it works the same for children and parents, right? Sometimes a child can feel like, how did my parent not see that, and how did my parents not do that? It's all part of what we're saying. Again, it's that Hashem has a plan, right? And those blind spots are what sets us up for free will. So I guess the prayer that we kind of learn from this, the tefillah that we can sort of take from this whole idea with Rivka and Yitzchak, that Rivka had the prophecy because she needed to see this in her children, but Yitzchak couldn't know about it because he needed to be blind for it. Is that we should argue that Hashem should give us the knowledge that we need in our own life, in our children's life, if that's relevant, or even in our own lives, and the blind spots as well, right? We should see what we need to see. We should be blind to the things that we don't need to see, because it is a balance, right? Sometimes, I think it's easiest to explain with parents and children. Like sometimes you see a parent that is so blind to their kids, and it's just like unfortunate because they're not giving the kid the help, right? And I think it applies to ourselves as well. Like sometimes we also have blind spots about ourselves, and sometimes the blind spots are good, right? And sometimes they're not. So we have to sort of dive into Hashem, that Hashem should help us see what we need to see and remain blind to the things that we don't need to see, because it's sometimes it's good. We see, as we see in the story of Rivka and Yitzchak, it was good that Yitzchak didn't have that knowledge, right? It helped him teach his children. It helped them, which gave them at the end of the day the free will. So Hashem should give all of us the vision to see what we need to see, and the blindness to see the things that aren't good for us to see, so that we can continue to use our free will to do mitzvahs in this world. If anyone has any questions, otherwise there was a question, but please remind me what it was.
It's about Yaakov saying untrue.
Yes.
I am. He did. He said, "I am who I am."
Right. So Rav, yeah. So you raised a very good. Sorry, what's your name?
It was Mr. Schwitzer's question.
Right, and what's
Why?
right? So as you're saying, is if you look through the thing, it reduces the question. I'm not. There's still remaining question. Rav Dessa's got a fascinating idea about this. He says that. Right. What is, if you look at the words, right? He says.
Are indeed my son Esau, and he said,
I am, right? So he didn't say I am Esau. He didn't say an outright lie, but he did say something which we would call a white lie, right? Which reduces the question, because it's not a straight out lie, but it's still a question. How could a man of and Yaakov was Ish Emes, right? So Rav Dessa has a fascinating idea which he explains, which I think is so relevant for our lives. And he says that generally, if you look at all the avos, right, Abraham was chesed, right? What was he tested with? The Akedah, which is the antithesis of chesed, right? What was Yaakov was Ish Emes? What was he tested with? With Lavan, right? The thing, all his tests were in the area of dishonesty. And Rav Dessa says, and again, it's a much wider discussion, but I'll try and give you a snapshot answer, is that every single person has a character trait that they, some people it's chesed, for some people it's gevura. Gevura is more of the inner strength, the inner, some people are just like disciplined, self-disciplined, right? And chesed and gevura are not on their own good or bad, right? It's how you use them, right? So Abraham was chesed, right? But his tests were in the area of not chesed. Are you a master of the chesed, or is the chesed the master of you? Are you able to rein in your chesed when Hashem tells you to? Yaakov as well. Yaakov was an Ish Emes. And again, Emes, honesty, sometimes you'll have people that will say things that are rude, and you'll call them on it, and they'll say, well, it's true, right? Honesty on its own is, yeah, and again, there's a halachos of exactly in it, but right, like it's very, very thing. But what was Yaakov tested with? With are you a master of your MS, or is your MS a master of you? Are you able to rein in your MS when Hashem tells you to do this, right? Your mother is telling you to do this. Your mother is working on Hashem's on Hashem's command. Are you able to do what you want to do? And he says in our own life, those are when our tests come in, right? Every person has a natural tendency towards a certain character trait, whether it's, some people are just more inclined towards saying yes, 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 and doing, giving and giving, and some people are more inclined into to doing the discipline. But the tests and the challenges that a person's given is always in the other one, right? Because that is how a person becomes a Baal Midas, right? Someone who is in control of their Midas versus their Midas just being in control of them.
But in this
Doesn't.
Yaakov's wise, sorry, the MS was the master of him. Because he had to say the lie, so therefore the truth didn't come out if you think about it. Till after Yitzchak died, when Musa found out. So the true business was the master over his self-control. Technically, he
So-
should have lied.
What would you mean?
Because he didn't say the truth, as we know. And then obviously the truth came out. So you say, are you a master of your character? But here, the character took Yaakov. Because he didn't say the truth, so it controlled him.
Esau wanted to kill him.
Because his mother told him not to. His mother told him not to. He had to do what was contrary to his character. Like when his mother said to him, he resisted, right? That his natural tendency was to say, I'm not doing this. This isn't true. I'm not doing this. And if we there's one piece that we didn't discuss, but which is an integral part of the story, is that Esau sold his birthright to Yaakov. Yaakov deserved the birthright, right? He deserved the brachas. He bought it from him, right? But still, Hashem tested him by giving it to him in a way that was a tiny bit of not emes in it, because it was a test. Are you a master of your emes, or is your emes a master of you? And he passed that test. He absolutely passed that test. And he did it in the best way possible. In that, he said, he didn't. If you look through all of it, he doesn't say, Yaakov said to his father, "It is I, Esau, your firstborn." Right? He's not saying I am Esau. He's saying it's I. Right? Esau is your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Rise up, please sit and eat of my game. Like, if you dissect the words, it's all technically emes, right? Yes, there is a little bit of a white lie, right? And in there, but it's Rav Dessa says this fascinating idea that a person is always tested in what's opposite of what their natural tendency is, and that is how we become a balanced person, right? Because really, what's greatness is not someone who's chesed, or it's not someone who has gevura. It's someone who knows when to use chesed, when to use gevura. Right?
Buying off the birthright from Esau, does that change his position in any way? Doesn't become the elder.
He just had the
what does buying the birthright give him?
that he
has
had,
the brothels.
yeah, entitlement to the brothels.
Uh-huh.
That's he. I mean, he's still the younger son, but he is entitled to the brothels. Yeah.
And Rivka knew this?
I'm not sure. That she knew that. Yeah.
You said he didn't lie. That's why everything's written in third tense. I am your son. I am Esau, your son, like it says. Basically, it's Israel. It's not written. She's not saying I'm Esau.
Yeah, exactly.
The one.
Thank you.